Lo que les estoy proponiendo en este momento, señores, es que formemos una organización.
The repercussions of the fall of the Medellin cartel reverberated beyond the immediate aftermath of its disintegration. The fates of its surviving members, varying from obscurity to continued notoriety, paint a vivid tapestry of crime, redemption, and the pursuit of justice. This video delves deep into the destinies of these individuals, shedding light on their trajectories post the cartel's downfall. Pablo Escobar's inner circle. When one speaks of the Medellin cartel, the name that immediately springs to mind is that of its infamous leader, Pablo Escobar. However, behind the shadows of this notorious figure were a number of loyalists, confidants, and key players who were instrumental in the operations of the cartel. Their roles varied, from managing finances to planning assassinations. But with the fall of Escobar, the destinies of these associates diverged in intriguing ways. One of the most notable figures within this inner circle was Gustavo Gaviria, Pablo's cousin and right-hand man. Considered the financial brain behind the Medellin operations, Gaviria was deeply entwined in the workings of the cartel. However, his association with the cartel came at a heavy price. In 1990, Colombian police, in their determined pursuit of cartel leaders, gunned down Gaviria. His death marked one of the first major blows to the organization and sent a clear message about the government's intentions. John Jairo Velázquez Vázquez, commonly known as Popeye, was another of Escobar's most trusted hitmen. He claimed responsibility for hundreds of murders on behalf of the cartel. Following Escobar's death, Popeye was captured and imprisoned in 1992. He served 23 years of his 30-year sentence before being released on parole in 2014. After his release, he tried to reinvent himself as a YouTube personality, talking about his past and giving insights into the workings of the cartel. However, his past caught up with him, and he was killed in 2020, marking the end of one of the last direct links to Escobar's reign. The role of women within Escobar's inner circle cannot be overlooked. Maria Victoria Henao, Pablo's wife, was perhaps the closest to him. After her husband's death, Maria Victoria and her 2 children sought asylum in various countries, ultimately settling in Argentina under assumed identities. For years, she led a relatively quiet life. However, in 2018, she was arrested on charges of money laundering. Though not directly involved in the cartel's operations, her proximity to Escobar meant that her life remained intertwined with the remnants of his empire. George Jung, although not Colombian, was deeply involved with the Medellin cartel. He was responsible for smuggling large quantities of cocaine into the U.S. in the 1970s and 80s. After being arrested and serving nearly 2 decades in prison, Jung was released in 2014. He then ventured into the world of film and literature, even consulting on the movie Blow, which chronicled his life and association with Escobar. He passed away in 2021, leaving behind a legacy that bridged the worlds of crime and entertainment. The Ochoa brothers. The Ochoa brothers, Fabio, Juan David, and Jorge Luis, were integral members of the Medellin cartel. Originating from a reputable family in Medellin, their foray into the world of drug trafficking marked a stark divergence from their family's history of legitimacy. Each brother played a distinct role within the cartel, but their fates, following its disintegration, took different paths, illustrating the multifaceted aftermath of being associated with such a powerful criminal enterprise. Juan David Ochoa, the eldest of the trio, was instrumental in the early stages of the cartel. His prowess in establishing connections, especially in the United States, ensured the smooth trafficking of cocaine, garnering vast revenues for the cartel. However, as the Colombian government intensified its crackdown on drug traffickers in the early 1990s, Juan David, alongside his brothers, decided to surrender. In 1991, they struck a deal with the Colombian government, which allowed them to serve minimal prison time in exchange for confessing to their crimes and paying hefty fines. Following his release, Juan David maintained a low profile, distancing himself from criminal activities. In 2013, he died of a heart attack, ending his chapter relatively quietly compared to many of his contemporaries. Jorge Luis, the middle brother, was considered the brains behind many of the cartel's operations. His acumen for business strategies and negotiations was unmatched. Like his elder brother, Jorge Luis surrendered to Colombian authorities in the early 1990s. After serving a short prison sentence, he emerged with a resolve to distance himself from the world of drug trafficking. Interestingly, Jorge Luis transitioned into a legal business venture, focusing on breeding horses. However, his past was never too far behind. In the late 1990s, he was detained by Colombian authorities on suspicion of continuing his illicit activities, but he was later released due to a lack of evidence. Jorge Luis's life, post-cartel, showcased the challenges many former traffickers faced in attempting to reintegrate into society and legitimate business. Fabio Ochoa, the youngest, experienced the most turbulent journey post the cartel's dissolution. Unlike his brothers who managed to negotiate deals with the Colombian government, Fabio's fate was intertwined with the United States war on drugs. After initially surrendering and serving a prison sentence in Colombia, he was later arrested in 1999 on charges of being involved in a new drug trafficking ring. The evidence against him was substantial, leading to his extradition to the United States. In 2003, he was convicted and sentenced to 30 years in a U.S. federal prison. Fabio's story stands as a testament to the difficulties some members faced in disentangling themselves from the allure and profitability of the drug trade. Carlos Leder's extradition and life. Carlos Leder, with his flamboyant personality and penchant for grandiosity, was a character larger than life in the annals of the Medellin cartel's history. Of German-Colombian descent, Leder revolutionized the drug smuggling business with his innovative methods, notably using private planes and clandestine airstrips. His audacious endeavors didn't stop at mere trafficking. He even acquired a private island in the Bahamas, Norman's Cay, turning it into a hub for cocaine smuggling into the United States. However, as is often the case with figures who rise meteorically, Leder's fall was swift and significant. By the late 1980s, his standing within the Medellin cartel had diminished. This weakening position, combined with increasing pressure from both U.S. and Colombian authorities, made him vulnerable. In 1987, in a move that stunned many, Leder was arrested by the Colombian National Police. But what followed was even more unexpected. Carlos Leder became the first major Colombian drug lord to be extradited to the United States. The extradition of Leder marked a turning point in the battle against drug trafficking. For the U.S., it symbolized a significant victory in their war on drugs, signaling that even the most influential traffickers were not beyond their reach. For Colombia, it was a controversial decision, with many seeing it as a capitulation to U.S. pressures, challenging the nation's sovereignty. Nonetheless, the stage was set for one of the most high-profile trials of the era. In the U.S., Leder faced a litany of charges, including drug trafficking, racketeering, and running a continuing criminal enterprise. The trial, which took place in 1988, was nothing short of sensational. The prosecution painted a picture of Leder as a mastermind behind a vast drug empire, responsible for smuggling tons of cocaine into the U.S. The defense, on the other hand, tried to project him as a mere pawn in a larger game. But the evidence against him was overwhelming. In the end, Leder was found guilty on all charges and was sentenced to life in prison without parole, plus an additional 135 years. While the trial and subsequent imprisonment might seem like the conclusion of Leder's story, it was far from over. Over the years, he began providing information to the U.S. authorities about other drug traffickers and operations. This cooperation, coupled with appeals and legal maneuvers, led to a reduction in his sentence. The sicarios, from hitmen to civilians. In the intricate web of the Medellin cartel's operations, while leaders like Pablo Escobar and the Ochoa brothers loomed large, an army of young, dedicated, and often ruthless foot soldiers known as sicarios played a pivotal role. These were the hitmen, often from impoverished backgrounds, lured into the world of crime by the allure of money, respect, and power. However, as the curtain fell on the Medellin cartel, these very sicarios found themselves at a crossroads, grappling with a world that had swiftly transformed around them. The heyday of the cartel was marked by violence and bloodshed, much of which was perpetrated by these sicarios. They were responsible for assassinations, kidnappings, and public shootouts. Their unwavering loyalty to their leaders and their willingness to undertake any task, no matter how perilous, made them indispensable. But this very loyalty and ruthlessness also made their post-cartel lives precarious. As the Colombian government intensified its crackdown on the cartel in the early 1990s, many sicarios found themselves facing the brunt of the law enforcement's wrath. Those who were captured faced long prison sentences. The jails of Colombia became populated with young men, many in their early 20s, serving time for their roles in the cartel's operations. Inside these prisons, many sought redemption, participating in rehabilitation programs, pursuing education, and even embracing religion. However, the outside world presented a different set of challenges for the sicarios, who either evaded capture or were released after serving their sentences. The neighborhoods they once ruled through fear had changed. The power dynamics had shifted, and new criminal organizations had emerged. Moreover, their notorious pasts often haunted them, making it challenging to reintegrate into society. Some tried to capitalize on their past, giving interviews, writing books, or even participating in documentaries and films about the cartel's reign. They became the face of an era marked by violence, providing first-hand accounts of the operations they were involved in and the rationale behind their actions. Others sought anonymity, hoping to escape the shadows of their past. They changed their names, moved to different regions or even countries, and tried to build new lives from scratch. Often, these attempts at building a new life were marred by the trauma of their past actions, the constant fear of retribution, and the challenges of adapting to a world that had moved on. The middlemen and logistics operators. In the grand narrative of the Medellin cartel, the leaders and sicarios often dominate the discourse. However, the intricate machinery of the cartel, which made it one of the most potent and profitable. Criminal organizations in history depended heavily on a vast network of middlemen and logistics operators. These were the individuals responsible for ensuring that the drugs moved seamlessly from the production sites to the consumers, evading law enforcement agencies and rival gangs alike. These middlemen were the linchpins of the operation. They orchestrated the transportation of cocaine from the jungles of Colombia to the bustling streets of American cities. They managed the airstrips, pilots, and boats, orchestrated the bribes, and ensured the smooth flow of both drugs and money. Their roles, although less violent than the sicarios, were fraught with risks. A single mistake could lead to the seizure of millions of dollars worth of cocaine, or worse, arrest and extradition. After the cartel's disintegration, these individuals, given their intricate knowledge of operations and connections, became prime targets for law enforcement agencies. The U.S., with its aggressive stance on the war on drugs, sought the extradition of many of these middlemen. For these operatives, the U.S. justice system held a potential fate worse than death: long prison sentences in maximum security prisons. One such individual was Max Mermelstein, a pivotal figure responsible for smuggling vast amounts of cocaine into the U.S. Although not Colombian, Mermelstein's involvement with the cartel ran deep. After his arrest in the mid-1980s, he chose to cooperate with U.S. authorities, becoming one of the most valuable informants in the war against the Medellin cartel. His testimonies and inside information led to numerous arrests and seizures. After serving a reduced sentence, Mermelstein entered the Witness Protection Program, living the remainder of his life under a new identity. Many other middlemen weren't as fortunate. Captured and imprisoned in Colombia, they became bargaining chips, either to be used in negotiations with U.S. authorities or to be eliminated by rivals or former associates fearing betrayal. These prisons, often corrupt and under the influence of powerful criminal organizations, became death traps for many. Stories of middlemen being assassinated in prison, sometimes with the complicity of guards, became all too common. Outside prison, the fates of these logistics operators were no less perilous. Many who avoided immediate capture went underground, leveraging their expertise and connections to serve new emerging cartels or criminal organizations. The world of narcotics, after all, abhors a vacuum. With the fall of the Medellin cartel, Other groups were eager to fill the void, and the expertise of these middlemen was invaluable. Griselda Blanco, the Black Widow's fate. Griselda Blanco, known infamously as the Black Widow, stands out as one of the few female figures to have carved a niche in the male-dominated underworld of drug trafficking. Her journey from the slums of Cartagena to being one of the most powerful and feared leaders within the Medellin Cartel is a testament to her cunning, ruthlessness, and tenacity. Blanco's entry into the world of crime began at a tender age. By her teenage years, she was already involved in petty crimes, but it was her move to the U.S., particularly to New York and later Miami, that marked the beginning of her ascent in the drug trade. In the 1970s and early 80s, Blanco was instrumental in establishing drug trafficking routes from Colombia to the U.S., earning her immense wealth and the respect of her contemporaries. However, with power came notoriety. Her propensity for violence, coupled with her involvement in both professional and personal vendettas, earned her the moniker the Black Widow. Blanco's methods were innovative and audacious. She was credited with pioneering the use of lingerie with secret compartments to smuggle cocaine, and her operations in Miami during the cities. Infamous cocaine cowboy era brought her both immense wealth and the attention of law enforcement agencies. In 1985, the law finally caught up with Blanco. She was arrested in California and subsequently faced charges that could have led to her execution. However, due to technicalities and the dubious nature of certain evidence, she was sentenced to a mere decade in prison, of which she served only 6 years before her release in 1991. Returning to Colombia after her release, one would expect Blanco to retire from a life of crime given her age and wealth. However, old habits die hard. While her activities were significantly reduced and she remained relatively under the radar, there were indications that she was never completely disentangled from the world of narcotics. The life of Griselda Blanco, filled with opulence, violence, and intrigue, was destined for a dramatic end. In 2012, in the city of Medellin, Blanco met her fate. In a twist that seemed straight out of a movie script, she was assassinated in a butcher shop, gunned down by a hitman on a motorcycle. A method of assassination she was rumored to have popularized during her reign. Blanco's death marked the end of an era. She was a remnant of the old guard, a testament to a time when the drug trade was emerging as the formidable beast it is today. Her legacy, however, is more than just her involvement in the narcotics trade. Griselda Blanco challenged the stereotypes and norms of her time. In a world dominated by men, she carved her path, leaving behind a trail of blood, but also a story of ambition, power, and resilience. The surviving informants. In the treacherous landscape of the narcotics trade, informants play a role that is as vital as it is dangerous. Their testimonies and inside information have often been the linchpin in dismantling vast criminal networks, including the formidable Medellin Cartel. However, the path of an informant is fraught with peril, presenting a delicate balance between seeking justice and ensuring personal survival. Turning informant is rarely an act of pure altruism. Many of those who chose to collaborate with the authorities did so for varied reasons. Some, facing long prison sentences, sought leniency. Others, disillusioned or betrayed by their compatriots, sought revenge. And a few, perhaps, genuinely wished to atone for their misdeeds. The information provided by these informants was invaluable. It wasn't just about names and transactions, it was about understanding the intricate workings of the cartel, the hierarchies, the alliances, and, most importantly, the weak points. Their insights allowed law enforcement agencies to strategize their assaults on the cartel, leading to numerous high-profile arrests and seizures. However, the decision to turn informant came with significant consequences. The Medellin Cartel was notorious for its ruthlessness towards traitors. The infamous phrase plata o plomo, silver or lead, succinctly encapsulated their approach. Accept a bribe and stay silent, or face assassination. Informants and their families lived under constant threat. Many of them, even after providing information, were relocated and given new identities under witness protection programs, both in Colombia and abroad. One such informant was Max Mermelstein, previously mentioned for his pivotal role in smuggling operations. His transition from a trusted cartel operative to a U.S. government witness was a significant coup for law enforcement agencies. Mermelstein's testimonies not only led to major arrests, but also provided a deep understanding of the cartel's U.S. operations. In return for his cooperation, he was given a new identity and a fresh start, though the shadows of his past always lurked close by. Another figure of note was Javier Peña, a moniker familiar to many due to the popular portrayal of his hunt for Pablo Escobar in the television series Narcos. In reality, Peña was instrumental in establishing links with insiders within the cartel, gaining their trust, and persuading them to turn informants. These informants, often living on borrowed time, were pivotal in narrowing down Escobar's movements, leading to his eventual downfall. However, not all informants found redemption or safety. Many faced violent retributions for their perceived betrayals. Stories abound of informants being hunted down and assassinated, not just in Colombia, but even in the supposed safety of foreign lands. Their fates were often used as cautionary tales, deterring others from collaborating with the authorities.
You think that half-homo Ospina knows what's coming? Good luck.
Rise of the new generations. The collapse of the Medellin cartel marked the end of an era in the narcotics trade. But nature, as it often does, abhors a vacuum. The void left by the cartel's disbandment paved the way for the emergence of newer, sometimes even more formidable criminal entities. For many former members of the cartel, this shift in the landscape presented an opportunity, a second act in the world of organized crime. These individuals, armed with expertise, connections, and ambition, played pivotal roles in shaping the future of drug trafficking post-Medellin. The fall of the Medellin cartel did not mean the end of the demand for cocaine or other narcotics. The lucrative drug trade was still very much alive, and as the old adage goes, where there's demand, supply will inevitably find its way. Several offshoots and splinter groups, born from the remnants of the Medellin cartel, began to vie for control of the trafficking routes and territories. The landscape became more fragmented, with multiple groups competing and collaborating in a complex dance of power dynamics. Many former cartel members seamlessly transitioned into these newer factions. Their experience and knowledge made them invaluable assets. Some even rose to leadership positions, using their understanding of both the operational and tactical aspects of the trade to guide these emergent organizations. The city of Medellin, once the heart of Escobar's empire, became a crucible for these new groups. They operated with a keen awareness of the past, often employing tactics and strategies honed during the cartel's heyday, but adapted to the new challenges of a post-Escobar world. However, this transition wasn't always smooth. The new landscape was characterized by increased competition and internal strife. Loyalties were tested, and betrayals were common. The violence that had marked the days of the Medellin cartel persisted, albeit with new players and revised stakes. The Colombian government, with support from international agencies, continued its crackdown on drug trafficking. These new organizations, while adept at navigating the challenges, faced constant threats from both rivals and law enforcement. A notable group that emerged during this period was the Oficina de Envigado. Originally established as a debt collection agency for the Medellin cartel, it evolved into a powerful criminal organization in its own right, controlling various aspects of the drug trade and even diversifying into other criminal activities. Many of its key members and leaders were once part of Escobar's empire, and they utilized their expertise to establish and expand the organization's influence. Another significant player that rose to prominence post-Medellin was the North Valley Cartel. Situated in a region known for its fertile grounds ideal for coca cultivation, this cartel quickly became a dominant force in the cocaine trade. Its rise was facilitated by former Medellin cartel members who brought with them not just operational know-how, but also established trafficking routes and connections. Fates unknown. The intricate narrative of the Medellin cartel, laden with tales of ambition, betrayal, and retribution, also carries within it stories that are incomplete, tales of individuals who, for various reasons, disappeared from the public eye. leaving behind more questions than answers. These enigmatic figures, once deeply entrenched in the cartel's operations, faded into obscurity, their fates becoming the stuff of rumors, conjectures, and sometimes urban legends. One such individual was El Fantasma, the Ghost, aptly named for his ability to operate discreetly within the cartel's hierarchy. While his real name remained a well-guarded secret, his influence was undeniable. He was known to be a key strategist, often involved in planning major smuggling operations. As the Medellin cartel crumbled, El Fantasma vanished. Some say he was killed in an internal feud. Others believe he leveraged his wealth to start anew in a distant land. And yet others claim he became an informant, his identity protected by international agencies. The truth remains elusive. Another shadowy figure was La Kika, known for his brutal methods and unwavering loyalty to the cartel's leadership. While there were numerous reports of his capture, confirmed details about his later years are scant. Rumors circulated of his presence in various parts of the world, from the dense jungles of Central America to the bustling streets of European cities. Whether he continued his involvement in the narcotics trade or sought a quieter existence is a matter of speculation. Then there was El Doctor, an educated man who provided a veneer of legitimacy to the cartel's operations. While not directly involved in the violent aspects of the trade, his role in money laundering and establishing front businesses was crucial. Following the cartel's decline, his trail went cold. Whispers in the underworld hinted at his reinvention as a legitimate businessman, his past buried deep under layers of legal enterprises and philanthropic endeavors. However, concrete evidence of his whereabouts and activities post the Medellin era remains scant. These individuals and several others represent the enigmatic facet of the Medellin cartel's history. Their roles, while pivotal, were often shrouded in secrecy, a trait that seemingly extended to their lives post the cartel's dissolution. The lack of clarity regarding their fates has given rise to numerous theories. Some believe that these figures, aware of the impending downfall of the cartel, meticulously planned their exits, ensuring they left no traces behind. Others argue that they met grim ends, their deaths kept secret to avoid drawing attention or triggering power struggles.